The Australian Grand Prix was utter chaos. And for once, I'm glad I woke up at 5:30 to watch it. It had everything. It had really good fights between three world champions, red flags, safety cars, and some FIA drama. Let's get into it. First of all, the start. George Russell had an incredible start, getting ahead of Max Verstappen, and Lewis Hamilton actually got past Max Verstappen down into turn 3 as well, with Max seemingly taking it quite easy on the brakes. Mercedes 1-2 at that point. No one saw that coming. The reality was, though, that once that Red Bull got up to speed, it was a quicker car, but early on, Mercedes looked really, really strong. George was holding pace out front, Lewis was in second, a little bit eager because Max Verstappen was chasing him down. Sadly, on lap 9, Alexander Albon, after running in P6, sadly lost the rear of the car and ended up hitting the barriers really hard. It's pretty scary as well because gravel came all the way across the track. Nico Hülkenberg went through it, but everyone was okay. Alex got out of the car. The problem was George Russell pitted when the safety car came out, which you'd think, okay, that's a good idea. Go on hards now until the end of the race. The problem was, a lap after that, the red flag was pulled out, which couldn't have been worse for George Russell and Carlos Sainz, who pitted under the safety car. It would actually sadly get worse for George Russell though, because later in the race, when he was making his way back through the field, his power unit gave way. A real concern for Mercedes. It seems like a genuine power unit failure. Have they been running them too strong to try and make that deficit to Aston Martin and Ferrari? For Lewis though, he actually had really great pace. Max was in a world of his own, and once Max got past Lewis Hamilton after the restart, Max was never giving that up. He breezed past him with DRS, and I think he was really just managing his pace all the way to the end. Hamilton, though, had like this interesting fight with Fernando Alonso. They were sort of trading fast laps, and Alonso would get close to him in DRS, and then he would back away. And you think, oh, is Fernando playing games? But actually, after the race, he said that he was really pushing, but he just didn't quite have the pace of Hamilton. The question is, does this Mercedes pace last? Is it going to be here now for the next couple of races? Is it because the temperatures in Australia are really low? Why do Mercedes suddenly have a jump? You know, why are they fighting Aston Martin and Ferrari all of a sudden? Because they were quicker in the race. Now, the next couple races, Baku and Miami, long straights. So I don't know if they're going to be able to hold out, but, you know, we'll see. Then we have Ferrari. Oh, Ferrari. Charles Leclerc had a great start, and he was making a move around the outside of Lance Stroll. But Lance Stroll was pinched because his teammate was on the inside, and they made contact. It was a racing incident, but sadly for Charles Leclerc, he ended up backwards into the gravel. Not ideal. Sainz also had great race pace. He was in a fight the entire race with sort of Gasly, Alonso, but he wasn't quite quick enough to catch Alonso. And then the red flag happened. Right towards the end of the race with 2 laps to go, Kevin Magnussen has a weird incident where he puts it in the wall and loses a tyre. And there was a lot of debris on the track, so they red flagged it. I don't agree with that, but we'll talk about that after. The problem is, during the restart, Carlos Sainz tapped Fernando Alonso into turn 1 and spun him around. He got a 5-second penalty for this. But when the race was restarted again, there wasn't any racing laps left. Again, I'll talk about that. I know it's confusing. But because of that, he dropped way out of the points and ended up basically getting nothing for his troubles, with Ferrari having a pointless race in all senses of the word. So let's talk about this red flag. I don't even know where to start. So the Kevin Magnussen incident happens. They decide to red flag the race. There's 2 laps to go. So when they do the standing start, that means that there's going to be the first lap off the grid and 1 more lap. Problem was, there was carnage, utter carnage. You have the incident with Carlos Sainz hitting Fernando Alonso. Then you have another incident. Logan Sargent goes into the back of Nick de Vries. That's completely separate. Gasly brakes too late for the first corner, goes across the grass, comes back across the track and pushes Ocon wide, and they both made contact. They both get hit into the wall, and they are now out of the race. Debris everywhere. Lance Stroll, who avoids all that incident, outbrakes himself into turn 3, goes into the gravel. It was chaos. So they red flagged the race again from the red flag restart. The problem with this is they were then trying to decide the order of the race. The rules state that for the race to carry on or be based on those positions, they have to pass a timing line before it's red flagged. So that would be the first point after sector 1. They didn't. So what the race directors decided to do was restart the race, but from the positions the lap before. So Alonso, who'd been put back to last after being spun by Carlos Sainz, chuffed, because he now starts in third again. So the positions all changed. It was very confusing. Sainz lost out though, because he's now got a 5-second penalty. And the race wasn't restarting because we were on lap 58 of a 58 lap race. So instead of just going, okay, well, there you go, guys, the race is over, they sent all the cars out just to do a lap behind the safety car so they could all cross the line. And that was that. The question is, why did they do that? Well, apparently they did that because cars have to cross the line under their own steam. And as Crofty was saying, which I disagree with, is, well, there's no reason not to restart. Well, there is. If there isn't a racing lap, you shouldn't restart, I don't think. This should be common sense. It should be in the rules. If the rules state that there can't be a racing lap, we shouldn't waste our time with it. But that is what happened. It was very bizarre. It was very odd. It was a weird end to the race because they red flagged the race originally so that the race wouldn't finish under the safety car with the Kevin Magnussen incident. And by doing that and having the red flag restart, standing start, that then caused another incident, which meant the race had to be finished behind the safety car. They would have been better off just finishing the race under the safety car when Kevin Magnussen had his incident. And I know that's not exciting, but it's fair. And chaos at the end, but I don't even know what to say. At least I'm glad I got up for this Australian Grand Prix. It was mental. There were some huge standout performances as well. Lando Norris raced brilliantly, especially when Sergio Perez rolled up behind him, and he kept Perez at bay for longer than anyone thought he would. He actually finished in P6. His teammate also in the points in P8. Then Nico Hülkenberg as well with a brilliant result. If they wouldn't have reversed the lap at the end, he would have actually potentially got a podium. But in the end, he finished in P7. Still great points for Hadz. And Gasly was just running so well, right behind Sainz and Alonso before he had his incident with Ocon. A real shame for Alpine losing both cars, but they did have some good pace. All in all, it was a really interesting race. What I did miss, though, was pit stops. Because of the red flags, we didn't get any pit stops, and that was a shame. But the race was interesting because Hamilton, Alonso, Sainz, and even Gasly were not far away from each other. I think we've got a really good race in the midfield this year, even if Red Bull are miles ahead. Either way, I enjoyed the Australian Grand Prix. I hope you enjoyed this recap, and I'll see you next time.